While many are just learning about the presence of multiple pantheons in the Marvel multiverse, comic book readers know that when it comes to gods, Marvel Comics actually has plenty.
Some we have already seen in the MCU and some we haven't.
So when it comes to Thor Love and Thunder, who would we like to see debut that hasn't already been teased?
And who would we like to see make a return appearance in the MCU?
Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight.
And I'm your host, Ben Ball. Join us as we count down the top 10 gods we want in Thor Love and Thunder.
Ooh.
Let's get into it. Alright.
Number 10, Loki. One person I am really still hoping to see in Love and Thunder is the god of mischief, Loki. I know main continuity Loki is dead in the MCU and gone, but there are still a ton of variants out there, including the new main alternate continuity variant from the Loki series. Heck, I'd even take a cameo from Kid Loki or Alligator Loki in this. Any of the Lokis, really. After all, Kid Loki does end up on the Young Avengers team, which is obviously slowly being introduced in the MCU, likely so they can eventually, join up and form the Young Avengers. Although he's not part of the original roster of that team, he is a prominent member later on. Boastful Loki or Classic Loki might be cool. Sylvie even might be an interesting one to have show up, as I think she'd really surprise Thor. Also, I wonder if, like in one of the comic book alternate universes where the two heroes are actually sisters in that universe, Sylvie's Thor was also maybe a female version of Thor. I'll even take Loki in flashback form if that's my only option. Just give me some more Loki, please.
At number 9 is Surtur. Although he's already appeared in Thor Ragnarok, I think this god needs to at least be referenced in the new movie once again if it's going to be consistent with the comics. Because Surtur, aka the Lord of Muspelheim, aka King of the Fire Giants, is an immortal being that truly never dies. He continues to make appearances throughout the Thor comics, and much of the time the conflicts seem to escalate to a point where Surtur is the be-all and end-all of basically all life in the cosmos. I mean, his sword is capable of destroying whole dimensions in one swing. So if this new movie needed perhaps a common enemy for both Gorr and Thor, or an overarching threat to the greater good of Asgard and beyond, Surtur would be the character to bring back to make that happen. I do think Gorr the God Butcher will be enough of a threat, but just in case they wanted to crank this sequel to 11, Surtur is there, and Clancy Brown is there to voice him again. I like Clancy Brown.
Number 8, Gaea. Gaea could be another interesting goddess to see in Thor 4, and I know that we said gods at this list, but goddesses, gods, we're covering all the genders in this, okay? In certain origin tales, Gaea is actually the mother of Thor, having been the mate of Odin in the guise of a woman named Jord. This is also why Thor is so attached to Midgard, as Gaea is the elder god of Earth, representing the planet and shaping it as she sees fit. In fact, I think she was even maybe responsible for the dinosaurs being gone. That was Gaea. Gaea was like, man will exist now. Ta-da! Gaea is also linked with Earth in an important way. She is a protector of the planet and also represents it, so if she were threatened, Earth would be threatened as well. Thor already had a mother in the MCU, Frigga or Frigg if you will, but even just threatening Gaea would put Gorr directly at odds with Thor, and would likely make Thor take the threat of Gorr very seriously. As harming Gaea could mean the destruction of Earth, which would also serve well to elevate the stakes, as Thor Odinson and Jane Foster Thor likely are going to have to team up to take on Gorr.
At number 7 is Ares. The God of War has come in and out of both Marvel and DC comic events, and although he is more commonly known as a character from ancient mythology, he has made enough appearances in the comics to appear in the MCU at this point, I would say at least. As we all know, Thor 2 is a character that was pulled from ancient mythology, so to reunite Thor with another Greek god at this point in his MCU run would just be a cool homage to his roots. And of course, Ares being the god of war and a villain by nature, this could open the door for some pretty even matchups for the other gods in the storyline. I think the presence of Gorr the God Butcher could give us a cool look into how nuanced Gorr's motivations are as well. Would he seek out Ares as one of his targets, or would he use him as a support system to first take down Thor and Odin? Hopefully if they included Ares, they would also throw in Hercules to even the playing field, or they could just not include either of them, which is probably what's actually going to happen, unfortunately. But I still hope, maybe see some Ares. At least not in this one, maybe the next one. We'll see.
Number 6, Khonshu. We now know Khonshu from the Disney Plus streaming series Moon Knight. We also know that the Egyptian gods exist. Wow. Well, a lot of them got messed up by Amit's and Arthur Harrow's attempt to basically rule the world, feeding on the souls of those destined to do ill. Khonshu survived that battle and is still out there. While Mark Spector and his other persona Stephen Grant believe they're actually free from Khonshu's influence, we learn that Khonshu still seems to have a hold over their shared physical form at the end of the series, with the reveal of Jake Lockley, limo driver slash assassin, the third persona residing within Mark. So it's possible that Khonshu could become the target of Gorr in Love and Thunder. In fact, many people expect that Moon Knight and Thor 4 could be more connected than they seem, due to the Egyptian pantheon being a big part of that series.
At number 5, I'm putting Serpent, or Cul Borson. Introduced during the Fear Itself storyline, Cul Borson is Odin's brother and Thor's uncle naturally, but he's more commonly known as the Norse god of fear. When he's freed from an underwater prison by Red Skull's daughter Sin, he makes it his work to turn many well-known Marvel superhumans into evil henchmen. This would include Juggernaut, Absorbing Man, and the Hulk, just to name a few. And his influence as a Thor villain is so extensive that I think we should expect to see him in the MCU at some point, whether it's the new sequel or not. Serpent would be a perfect addition to the MCU since he's both an extremely powerful and overwhelming force against Thor and his allies, but also, and more importantly, because he's part of Thor's family. So the character would offer great opportunities for both drama as well as epic action sequences, and maybe even a crossover with these henchmen listed before. He also turns into a giant snake, which would just be pretty badass visual for the VFX team.
Number 4, One Above All. The One Above All could be a super cool god to see in Thor Love and Thunder, and just in general. For those unfamiliar, the One Above All is literally the god of the Marvel Universe, often presented as being one of the supreme and ultimate good gods with the most power within the Marvel multiverse and beyond. The One Above All is often depicted as resembling Jack Kirby or Stan Lee, a couple of the main founding fathers over at Marvel Comics. RIP. Considering that Stan Lee could now be digitally recreated and Disney has rights to use his likeness, this might be a cool or perhaps a disturbing one to have, depending on how it's done. That is, if we want this god to look like either Stan Lee or Jack Kirby, but yeah. Granted, I wouldn't want Gorr killing the One Above All, but I also don't think he'd be able to do that unless we really want to see him as being like crazy OP. I don't even know what would happen if you did that. It might be cool just to have some nod to the existence of this major godly presence within the MCU. Although when it comes to Stan Lee continuing to potentially do cameos in the MCU past his, his physical demise, let me know how you feel about that possibility in the comments. It hasn't been announced, but we know that Disney does have the rights to use his likeness from the Stan Lee universe, who actually own that, and I certainly have some complex feelings about this whole thing in general.
At number 3 is the Midgard Serpent, or Jormungand. For those of you who don't already know, this is a different serpent than the one mentioned previously. This one doesn't have a human form. It's an immortal, snake-like beast that is known as the son of Loki and sorceress Angrboda. This creature is a recurring opponent to Thor, and his influence is immense. He's one of those bad guys that never actually gets killed, with the gods only being able to banish or imprison him. He's so powerful that just by moving around, he causes earthquakes and tidal waves on Earth, and he also has the ability to create complex illusions that are capable of deceiving even the most powerful of beings. He also typically appears in his ethereal form, during which he is basically invisible to his opponents. Even in his final battle with Thor in the comics, he doesn't fully appear in corporeal form, with some of his body still in a spiritual plane of existence. Jormungand is also a god killer, with his venom being lethal to any and all gods if he lands an attack just right. So if he did appear in the new movie, perhaps Gorr would be able to use the creature to his advantage, before ultimately needing to turn on the serpent himself. That is, if he were consistent with his grudge towards gods. We'll see.
Number 2, Hercules. I mean, I'm still waiting for Hercules to make an appearance in any of the trailers we get, but as this movie is quickly approaching, I think this might be a cameo that is actually kept as a surprise. Oh my goodness, something that's a surprise in a Marvel movie. So rare. Or Hercules might not appear in the Greek pantheon as well, because I think they're all gonna die. Obviously we don't want that for Hercules, who is not only a powerful and mighty hero, but is also a fairly good friend to the X-Men as well later on, and the Avengers, taking the younger X-students in at Avengers Academy at the behest of Captain America during the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, back when Hercules was actually filling in as faculty there. Hercules is actually a really popular hero in Marvel canon, at least among other supers. In addition to being a friend of the X-Men, he's been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Defenders, and of course, the God Squad. I'm really hoping we see the God Squad in this. Also in the alternate reality of Earth 12025, Hercules is actually the romantic partner of James Howlett, aka alternate Wolverine.
Finally, at number 1 is King Phoenix, God of Fire. As much as I doubt this character is actually going to appear in Thor Love and Thunder, a guy can dream. And the only reason why I say this is that I see no signs that this story is going to jump into the other reality in which old King Thor lives and exists. And even if they did, I don't imagine that they'd make an attempt to introduce the Phoenix Force into the mix, considering how busy the movie already seems to be. Because if you're unaware of who this character is, or if you missed my Thor variants list previously on the channel, King Phoenix, God of Fire is a mixture of both old King Thor and the Phoenix Force. And the result is a supercharged, overpowered variation of Thor that I can imagine would make easy work of some of Thor's otherwise unbeatable enemies. Now, although I don't suspect anything like this could happen in the new movie dropping in July, I think it's inevitable that we'll at least see old King Thor at some point in a future MCU project. Or maybe in the after credits scene or something like that. But I may be wrong, so if you have a hunch that this new movie could include the older version of Thor, please let me know in the comments, because this has got to be my favorite of Thor's variants. And I just think it would be really great to see a mature, aged version of Thor with years of wisdom under his belt. And then adding Phoenix Force would just be the cherry on top, but I'd settle for old King Thor as well.
Okay, that was our list for today. Thanks for watching.
Which gods would you like to see in the upcoming Thor movie?
Or any characters for that matter. Throw your predictions and your desires down below, and we'll do our best to take a look at all of them.
Thanks for watching. This has been Top 10 Nerd. I've been your host, Ben Ball.
And I've been your host, Amanda McKnight. See you in the next one. Stay nerdy, YouTube. Bye.